What they would know, what the record books and church books would write, is that Thomas Cartwright grew up pale and thin with his father's eyes, and some said his mother's stubbornness. That the nurse girl on the property never married, never appeared on any bill of sale after a certain year, and seemed to come and go like wine through the magnolia. As for Rose, the story you have heard tonight only follows her to the edge of the property line. Whether she stayed and bent the house slowly around her, or walked down that long road and vanished into a freer air, is a choice she earned. A choice bought with years of pain and one widow's late, imperfect courage. What does not change in any version is this. A woman went to the slave yard to buy peace for her baby and found instead a map of her husband's sins written in a girl's face. And for once she did not look away. I'm tired of building my life out of their guessing. Her gaze lifted to meet Rose's. If you stay, I will never call you into my room at night to soothe my loneliness. I will never sell you to pay off some foolish expense of mine. I will never pretend you are anything less than what you are. The child of the man whose money built this house and the sister of my son. That is not freedom, but it is not nothing. And if I go, Rose asked, then I will help you, Eleanor said. The words scared her even as she spoke them. There are people in town who know roads the law pretends not to see. I will give you money, clothes, and letters that might mean something in places where my name still carries weight. I will tell anyone who comes asking that you died of fever or ran off with a man or anything else that keeps their boots from your trail. The offer hung between them, heavy and fragile. Rose looked out over the fields. In the distance, men and women bent to their work, tiny figures against the long green rows. She thought of nights in other yards, of hands grabbing, of whispers she pretended not to hear. She thought of the wagon that had taken her from the first house, of the way her supposed fate had been decided by men who never once asked her if she wanted to live. Now, for the first time, someone was asking what she wanted. I do not know enough about the world to run into it alone, she said slowly. But I know enough to say this. I will not be treated like a secret shame in this place. If I stay with my head up. If I go with more than the clothes on my back. Eleanor nodded once. Then stay for now, she said. Stay until you know which frightens you more, the road or these walls. When you choose, tell me, not him. She lifted her chin toward the painting in the hall. He has chosen enough for you already. Rose let out a slow breath she had not realized she was holding. Thomas fussed, and she shifted him with that same natural ease, patting his back until he gave a sleepy little sigh. I will stay, she said. For him. She looked down at the baby. It ain't his fault where he was born, no more than it was mine. Eleanor's eyes stung. No, she agreed. It is not. From that day on, the house changed in ways small enough that a casual visitor might not have noticed, but large enough that everyone who lived there felt them. Rose moved through the halls like someone half remembering a dance. She learned which floorboards squeaked, which hinges groaned, which rooms let in too much heat in summer and too much cold in winter. Mrs. Briggs watched her with a weary sort of affection, scolding when she was careless, shielding her when her temper flared. You cannot talk to every white soul the way you talk in your head, she warned. But you can think all you like. Just make sure the thinking keeps you safe, not sorry. At night, when the house was finally quiet, Eleanor sometimes stood in the nursery doorway and watched Rose and Thomas sleeping in the rocking chair together, his small body sprawled across her lap, her head tilted back against the wormwood. They looked like a painting no one would ever hang in a parlor, a slave girl and a planter's heir, sharing the kind of peace that did not care about law or family line. In those moments, the painting of Edward Cartwright in the hall felt less like a tribute and more like a warning. His eyes followed her, but they no longer had the power to tell her what kind of woman to be. Years later, neighbors would still talk, as neighbors do. They would say the widow Cartwright went odd after her husband died, that she spoiled a slave girl by keeping her too close, that she spoke too sharply to men in town who suggested she should remarry. They would never know the full story. They would not know that in a back drawer Eleanor kept a folded scrap of paper on which she had written two names side by side, Thomas Cartwright and Rose Harding, and then beneath them in a hand that shook, brother, sister, They would not know that one spring, when rumors of slave catchers grew too loud and the air felt wrong, Eleanor pressed a small pouch of money into Rose's hand and said, "If you go, go tonight. Take him if you must. I will say I woke to an empty cradle and an empty room. I will cry for you both in front of anyone who asks, and I will mean it. Even if you had shouted, the men will have closed ranks. That is how this world runs." "Well, I am not young anymore," Eleanor said, "and the man whose name is on the gate is under the ground. So tell me plainly, is there any doubt in your mind whose child that girl is?" The housekeeper met her eyes for the first time. "No, ma'am," she said, "not with that nose and that temper when she thinks nobody sees, and those eyes. I have seen your husband's look in plenty of faces. Hers is the first that made me feel sorry for him." Eleanor let out a breath she had not realized she had been holding. "Then I am a stepmother," she said slowly, "to a child who has been bought and sold like furniture. And my son," she swallowed, "my son has a nurse who is also his sister." The word tasted strange and right all at once. "What are you going to do?" Mrs. Briggs asked. There was no challenge in it, only weary curiosity. "For once," Eleanor said, "I am going to decide something for myself and not let men's mistakes do all the deciding." She found Rose in the garden later that morning, standing under the magnolia tree with Thomas on her hip. The baby was awake, blinking up at the branches, one fist tangled in a fold of Rose's dress. Sunlight slipped through the leaves and patches, painting his face in broken gold. "You should not be out without a shawl," Eleanor said, more to announce herself than because she cared about the weather. "His chest catches the wind too easily." Rose turned, adjusting the baby automatically, so his weight rested comfortably on her. "He was fussing inside, ma'am," she said. "Sometimes the air helps." Thomas kicked once, then settled again, content with the simple fact of being held. His eyes, Edward's eyes, moved between the two women. "I have questions," Eleanor said, "and I am done pretending I do not." Rose's shoulders stiffened. "Yes, ma'am. Did your last master ever speak of this place, of Cartwright land?" "No, ma'am," Rose said. "He only ever talked about debts and weather. But the man who sold me to him once called me that Cartwright mess when he was drunk." Her jaw tightened. "He thought I did not hear. And before that," Rose shook her head, "just pieces. A blue dress. A watch that chimed. The way my first mistress cried when they took me. She smelled like lavender and ink." She looked at Eleanor. "You smell like that sometimes." Eleanor's throat closed. She stepped closer, close enough now to see the faint freckles across Rose's nose. The way one of her front teeth overlapped just slightly, exactly as Edward's had. "My husband," she said, choosing each word with care, "was not the man I thought he was. I think you know that already." Rose's eyes flashed. "I know he was a man in a big house, and I was a child they could drag through the mud," she said. "I know somebody put a price on me when I did not have a say. I did not set that price," Eleanor said more sharply than she meant to. She forced herself to soften. "But I have benefited from the world that did. That is also a kind of guilt." Rose looked down at Thomas. He had grabbed one of her braids and was trying to chew on it. She gently pried his fingers loose. "What do you want from me, ma'am?" she asked. "You want me to thank you for buying me instead of some other? You want me to forget who I am? I want to know if you will let me do one thing right." Eleanor said quietly, "For you. For him." She nodded at the baby. "For the man who left you both with his eyes and nothing else." Rose studied her. The wind shifted, carrying the distant sounds of work from the fields, the metallic clink of tools, a piece of song. Life going on, indifferent. "You cannot change what he did," Rose said finally. "You cannot change where I have been. You cannot change that I am yours on paper." "No," Eleanor agreed. "But papers can burn and people can move." Rose's breath hitched. "You talking about freedom?" Eleanor glanced back toward the house, toward the road that led to town and beyond that to other roads leading farther than she had ever let herself imagine. "I'm talking about choices," she said. "You may not want what I would want. You may want to run so far this place turns into a story you tell to frighten other girls. Or you may," she hesitated, surprised by her own next thought, "you may want to stay." To grow up in a house where no man will ever lay a hand on you the way he did on your mother. To help raise your brother, not as a servant, but as something closer to what you are. Rose's fingers tightened on Thomas's small body. He squirmed, then settled again, trusting. And what would the town say, she asked slowly, about a mistress keeping her husband's bastard under her roof like family? Eleanor's mouth twisted. The town already talks, she said. They talk when a husband dies, when a widow wears black too long or not long enough, when a baby fusses, when the crops fail. Let them. The girl appeared almost instantly, as if she had been standing just outside listening. Yes, ma'am. Eleanor held the baby out. Take him. The moment his body settled against Rose's shoulder, the crying changed. It did not stop, not all at once, but it softened. The sharp edge was gone. His tiny hand fumbled for the fabric of her dress, found it, and calmed. His cheek pressed against the hollow of her neck, like it remembered something. Rose closed her eyes for a heartbeat. There now, she whispered. That is it. You know me, do not you? You know how to listen to a heartbeat that sounds like yours. Eleanor watched something cracking inside her. Why does he look at you that way? She asked, voice low. Like he has finally found what he has been yelling for. Rose opened her eyes. They shone strangely in the lamplight. Maybe he smells what they took from both of us, she said softly. Maybe he knows we both missed the same man. Eleanor's breath caught. She looked from the baby's face to Rose's. Back to the painting in the hall she could see reflected faintly in the glass of the nursery door. The colors lined up in her mind like a terrible math problem. Edward Cartwright, who had ridden out in storms. Edward Cartwright, whose temper they all tiptoed around. Edward Cartwright, who had walked these halls at night when his wife slept alone. And Rose, the girl who rocked her son like she had been born to it, with her husband's eyes staring back at her over the edge of Slave's dress. Eleanor did not sleep that night. After Rose settled Thomas back into his cradle, after the baby sighed once, clutched a fold of the girl's dress in his tiny fist, and sank into heavy sleep, the house felt quiet in a way that felt wrong. No screams, no walking, just the ticking of the tall clock in the hall and the slow creaking of the rocking chair as Rose sat a little longer, watching the child's chest for rise and fall. Eleanor stood in the doorway, hands gripping the frame so hard her knuckles ached. The lamp threw small circles of light over the nursery. The carved cradle Edward had insisted on ordering from New Orleans, the painted toy horse that had belonged to no child until Thomas, the curtains her sister had chosen as a wedding gift. All of it had been built on the idea of a life she thought she understood. Now in the soft glow, that life looked like a stage set waiting for someone to pull the backdrop down. Go and lie down, she told Rose eventually. You will be no use to him if you fall asleep standing up. Yes, ma'am, Rose said, rising carefully. She brushed a hand once more over Thomas's hair, then slipped past Eleanor, eyes lowered. The faint scent of milk and sweat and some cheap soap trailed after her, painfully familiar and entirely new. Eleanor sat in the rocking chair herself, though there was no child in her arms. She rocked slowly, listening to the house breathe. Somewhere below, a floorboard creaked under Mrs. Briggs's weight as she made her last rounds. Farther out in the cabins, a baby cried and was answered. A man coughed. A woman sang a low song. The sounds layered over one another into a rough lullaby. The heartbeat of a plantation that pretended to sleep while always keeping one eye open. By dawn, she had made up her mind. At breakfast, she did not eat. She sat at the end of the long table under Edward's painting, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee gone cold, and waited until Mrs. Briggs came in with the morning accounts. Sit, Eleanor said. The older woman blinked. Mom, seat. I'm tired of talking at someone standing over me like a judge. Today we can be two women who have seen too much. Mrs. Briggs hesitated, then lowered herself into a chair halfway down the table. Her back stayed straight, but her face softened a little. You know, do not you? Eleanor said. About him. About girls like Rose. About children with the wrong eyes in the wrong cradles. Briggs stared at her hands. I know what every woman on land like this knows, she said. That some men think walls and rings and promises are for certain doors only. They build other doors in the dark. They walked through those, too. And you said nothing. A spark flared in the housekeeper's eye. To whom, ma'am? To you when you was 20 and glowing, thinking this place was a storybook? To your husband, who paid my wages? To your mother-in-law, who would have called me a liar and whipped any girl I named? We all pick which truth we can survive. I picked keeping my tongue, so I could keep these hands steady enough to help the ones who needed it. Eleanor looked away, shame and anger twisting together in her chest. All this time, she whispered, I told myself I was innocent because I did not go to the yards, did not sit on the porch when the overseer brought new people up from the road. I thought if I did not see, I was not part of it. Mrs. Briggs's voice gentled. You were young, and you were a wife, not a king. A small table held a pitcher and basin, and a cracked mirror leaned against the wall. The window looked out over the side yard where the magnolia tree spread its shiny branches. Eleanor paused in the doorway. Rose stood by the window, shoulders tense, hands gripping the sill. She had taken off her head cloth. Her hair fell in tight, dark curls around her face. You should be resting, Eleanor said. You will have a long night. Thomas sleeps now, but I do not trust him to keep such kindness. Rose jumped, then relaxed a little. I was just looking, she said. Try to remember if I had been here before. You think you might have? The girl frowned, brows drawing together. Sometimes when I ain't thinking about it. Things come, she said slowly. The way the stairs creak in that back hall. The sound the clock makes on the hour. That picture in the dining room with the man on the horse and the river behind him. Eleanor's skin prickled. You saw that today at dinner. Rose shook her head. I knew it was there before I opened the door. I could feel it like I had walked past it 1,000 times. She turned to face Eleanor fully. In the late light, her eyes seemed almost golden. They told me my first mistress cried when they took me, she said. Said she begged and begged, but the master's people said it was better this way. Said they had to fix a mistake. I do not remember her face. I just remember a blue dress and a hand smelling like lavender and ink. Lavender and ink, Eleanor's breath caught. She had always dipped her pens in the study and then gone straight to the nursery without washing, tracing her fingers over patterns on the cradle's edge, smelling of paper and perfume. Her knees felt weak. She sat on the edge of the little bed before she fell. Your last master, she managed. What was his name? Rose's jaw clenched. Mr. Harding, she said. But that was not where I started. That was where I ended up after they took me from wherever I was first. Do you remember any names from then? Anything at all? Think. Silence stretched. The magnolia's branches scratched softly at the glass. At last, Rose whispered, I remember somebody calling a man Edward when he came in the room. And once when I was half asleep, I heard another lady say, Cartwright's gone and lost his senses. But I was little, ma'am. She looked down at her hands. Names slip away when you do not have nothing to pin them to. Eleanor stared at her. The house seemed to tilt around them, old boards groaning as if under some new weight. Supper, ma'am. Mrs. Briggs's voice called faintly from below. Cook says if we do not eat now, everything will be fit for hogs, not humans. Eleanor rose slowly. Come down when you are called to the nursery, she told Rose. If he cries for you and not for me, I want to know it. Yes, ma'am, Rose said. As Eleanor went down the back stairs, her hand trailed along the banister. Her fingers found the same nicks she had known for years. How many times had Edward run his hand along this same rail on his way to some hidden room, to some secret life? She thought of the gossip she had dismissed when she first married him. Planters' wives whispered about fancy girls kept in hidden cabins, about children with familiar noses and strange skin working in kitchens instead of sitting in parlors. She had told herself Edward was different. He was attentive, charming, always ready with a story. And then she thought of the night their son was born, of the midwife's worried frown, of Edward's absence, called away suddenly to the far fields, they had said, while she labored and screamed, of his return with mud on his boots, and something guilty in his eyes that she had been too tired to read. At the dinner table, his painting watched her from the wall, riding his horse along the river as if nothing bad had ever happened on his land. The painted eyes were the same color as Rose's, the same color as Thomas's when he opened them wide in the dark. Mrs. Briggs poured soup. "You look like you have seen a ghost, ma'am," she said quietly. "Are you sure going to the yard was the right thing?" Eleanor's spoon clinked against the bowl. "I want to buy a nurse," she replied. "I think I may have bought a confession." Mrs. Briggs's hand paused. The older woman's gaze moved toward the nursery, then back. Something like reluctant sympathy softened her face. "Sometimes the dead leave more than paintings behind," she said. "We all know that. Some just do not like to say it out loud." Later that night, when Thomas woke with a thin, searching cry, Eleanor went to his room alone. She lifted him, walked him, whispered the lullabies her own mother had sung. He squirmed and fussed, his cry rising too close to the old pitch that drove nails into her head. She hesitated, pride and dread fighting in her chest. Then she went to the door and called down the hall. "Rose." She thought of Edward's painting in the parlor, eyes painted that same impossible color. "I will take her," she heard herself say. "Whatever your price is, I will pay it." Every head turned. The auctioneer's eyebrows went up. "Well, now the widow has come to buy herself some peace." "Very good, ma'am. Very good." Sold at opening bid to Mrs. Cartwright. Rose stepped down from the block as if in a dream. Chains rattled as they unhooked her from the others. She did not look at Eleanor until a hand on her arm guided her toward the waiting carriage. Then for a brief moment, their eyes met again. Haschel mit Haschel. Something like knowing flashed between them and was gone before either could name it. Eleanor told herself it was just her imagination, a tired mind seeing what it wanted. She told herself the girl's eyes were just eyes, that plenty of people in this world shared colors and shapes without sharing blood. She told herself a lot of things as the carriage rolled back toward the plantation, carrying a hungry baby's desperate need and a girl whose being might rewrite everything Eleanor thought she knew about her late husband's life. The baby stopped crying the moment Rose held him. It should not have surprised Eleanor as much as it did. Women in town said hungry children could smell milk and comfort before a nurse even spoke. But the change was so sudden, it felt like a trick. One moment, Thomas was arching his back and screaming red-faced in his cradle, little fists beating the air. The next, Rose's arms slid under him with practiced care, drawing him to her chest. His scream wavered, hiccuped, and then sank into a low, hungry whimper as his cheek found the warm curve of her neck. "There now," Rose murmured. Her voice was low and steady with a rhythm that did not quite match the house or the town. Somewhere deeper in the country, Eleanor guessed. "Hush, little man. Ain't no call to shout the roof down. You got somebody now." Her hands were sure. She bounced him just enough, not too much. When he pushed blindly at her shoulder with his mouth, she shifted him with a small, natural movement that told Eleanor everything she needed to know about how many babies this girl had calmed before. "Seems he knows what he wants," the old housekeeper, Mrs. Briggs, muttered from the corner, arms folded. Her face was a careful blank, but her eyes missed nothing. "And you, missus, have got what you paid for." Eleanor bristled at the tone, but let it pass. Her attention was on her son. For the first time in days, his face was peaceful, his tiny mouth loose with sleepy satisfaction. His fingers, which had clawed at the air all night, now lay curled against Rose's collarbone. "You may sit," Eleanor said stiffly. "Rock him there by the window. If he wakes, you will feed him. If he fusses, you will walk him. If he—" "I know, ma'am," Rose said quietly. "I have nursed plenty that was not mine." The words pinched something in Eleanor's chest. Not mine. She watched the girl sink into the rocking chair by the nursery window, watch her body adjust automatically to the rhythm babies liked. The chair creaked softly. Forward, back, forward, back. Outside, the afternoon sun fell over the front drive and the broad steps of the house. Rose's eyes moved once toward the view, and there it was again. That odd, quick tightening around her mouth, like someone tasting a flavor they had not expected. "You have seen a place like this before?" Eleanor asked, trying to sound casual. Rose hesitated. "Big houses all look near the same from a distance, ma'am," she said at last. "White columns, long porches. Hard to tell one from another if you only ever see them from the yard." "But you have seen one," Eleanor pressed, "before your last place?" Rose's fingers stroked Thomas's back in small, absent circles. "I was little," she said. "Do not remember much. Just the smell of magnolia by the front path. The sound of a clock in the hall. A blue dress rustling when a lady walked by." Her hazel eyes slid toward Eleanor's morning gown, then away again. "It is all mixed up now." Mrs. Briggs shifted, the floorboard complaining under her weight. Eleanor glanced at the older woman and saw something like warning there, as if to say, "Leave this alone. We all live easier when certain questions die." But the question would not die. It had taken root the moment Eleanor saw those eyes on the auction block. And now every small detail fed it. Later, when Rose had laid Thomas down and the baby slept with his mouth open, dreaming of nothing more complicated than warmth and a full belly, Eleanor walked the quiet hallway alone. Her footsteps guided her not to her own room, nor to the study where Edward's papers still lay in stiff, accusing order, but to a narrow staircase at the back of the house. The stairs led to the small attic room Rose had been given, a space under the sloping roof that once held trunks and forgotten dresses. Now a straw mattress lay in. They told Mrs. Eleanor Cartwright that a lady wearing clothes for mourning should not go to the slave yard. It was not proper. They said it was not fitting for a fine widow in black silk to stand where tobacco spit and cheap whiskey soaked into the ground. But none of the women whispering behind their fans had a baby who screamed through the night until his voice gave out. None had a nursery that echoed with a cry she could not calm. Her son Thomas was 3 months old and furious at the world. Nurses had come and gone, hired girls and older women from the house, all defeated by his red-faced anger. "He wants what he is missing," the doctor mumbled once, putting his things in his bag. "Babies know when someone is gone. You waited too long to give him to another woman's arms." Eleanor had almost hit him. She had not waited. Her husband, Edward, had gone out into a summer storm and never come back, thrown from a scared horse on the far edge of the property. One moment he had been laughing in the doorway, boots dirty, promising to be home before the evening meal. The next, she was standing over a body that did not move and signing papers she could barely see because of her tears. Now the house was too big, too quiet in the wrong places, and too loud in the nursery. Her son's cries scratched at her nerves like a desperate hand. At night, when she walked the floor with him, she heard other sounds mixed under his screaming. Her husband's deep voice, her mother-in-law's sharp one, and somewhere, very faintly, the almost forgotten laughter of girls in the yard when she had first come here as a new wife, hearing stories she had not wanted to understand. "It is simple," the doctor's wife had said, pulling a thread from her sleeve. "Go into town. Buy yourself a good nurse. There are always girls to be had. Country-raised, strong hips, good milk. The baby want a breast, not a bottle." The word "buy" felt wrong in Eleanor's stomach. She had never stood on an auction block. She had never had to watch someone she loved drag past one. The business of purchasing human beings had always been her husband's area, done out of her sight. She had told herself that made her clean. But 3 nights without sleep stripped all that fancy idea away. When the baby's cries became higher, when her own arms shook from holding him, when the bottle dripped uselessly from his tightly closed mouth, she made a decision. The next morning, she dressed in black and told the driver to get the carriage ready. At the slave yard, men looked up in surprise. A widow's veil among their rough coats and wide hats looked like a crow fallen into a pack of dogs. The auctioneer took off his hat with too much politeness. "Mrs. Cartwright, an honor. I need a nurse," she said before he could start into a speech. "Young enough to keep up with the house, strong enough to feed a child. Clean, no drunkenness, no laziness." He spread his hands. "We have a few girls from a small estate being broken up. Sad business. The master died with more debts than land. God rest him. You may find what you need among them." They brought the girls out one by one, lining them on the block. Some were clearly too young, flat-chested and scared. Others were older, their mouths set in hard lines that said they had seen enough of the world to know what was coming, no matter whose hands they ended up in. The third girl made her breath catch. She was maybe 16, maybe 17. It was hard to tell with hunger making the bones of her face sharp. Her dress hung loose, her bare feet were rough, and her hands were dry and cracked from work. but she stood straighter than the others, shoulders pulled back, chin at a careful angle that was not a challenge and not giving an either. Her skin was light brown, her hair tied back in a simple cloth. The auctioneer called her Rose. "Good field stock," he said. "Worked in a big house some too. Strong as any boy. Could make a fine nurse, ma'am. She has had practice rocking other folks' babies." Eleanor barely heard him. The girl had lifted her eyes for a moment to look over the crowd. And in that quick second, Eleanor saw something that caught on her heart like a torn thread. Hazel eyes, not brown, not black, but a strange mix. Green touched with gold. It was an unusual color in these parts. She had seen it in one man more times than she could count. Edward's eyes. She blinked hard, blamed the sun, blamed the lack of sleep. The girl looked away again, jaw tight. Still, the feeling remained. A ghost of her husband staring out from a stranger's face. $10 to start, the auctioneer called. "Who will bid for the girl?" Men mumbled, weighing their money pouches. Somewhere behind Eleanor, someone laughed softly and said something about good for nights as well as days. Her throat tightened. She thought of her son at home. Tiny fists beating the air, face red, lungs straining.